Welcome back to another episode of The Feeding Hour. In this episode, we invite Laura Longnecker on, sleep specialist and mother of two, to share her story with her own children and her sleep expertise. Thanks so much, Laura, for coming on. As a note in the episode, we use the phrase rest is a noun rather than a verb, meaning rest is a state of being rather than something that moms just have to do, another thing. However, we say rest is a verb, not a noun. Just wanted to clarify. Enjoy. Hey, Abby.
Hi, Catherine. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good.
Well, I'm so happy to welcome our guest, Laura Longnecker. She is a nurse, a sleep specialist, and she has two children of her own. And we're so excited to hear her feeding story with her own children, her transition from nurse to sleep. Oh, Laura, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for
We'd
coming.
love for you to just begin with what kind of brought you to be interested in baby sleep, and then that can include everything and anything.
Okay, yeah, for sure. So just as a brief introduction, I am a registered nurse by background. I've been a nurse for over 10 years and really didn't have any exposure other than, the occasional babysitting job. I had some younger siblings that weren't so much younger that I necessarily remember super well, their infancy, how they slept, etc. And in my nursing journey as well, I didn't really interact too much with pediatrics, so it's a little bit of an interesting transition, I guess. I was into cardiac. I loved cardiac nursing and I did emergency nursing, and that was very much my jam. My most recent nursing job was actually in cardiac rehab. So I loved kind of the blend of rehabilitation, getting people back to their normal lives from having this really catastrophic life-changing part of it. So I was very passionate about that. Really, my first exposure to baby sleep was the night after my daughter was born. I mean, it was very much trial by fire, which I think is unfortunately a lot of people's experience. I don't know that our culture, there's so many factors involved. I'm not trying to point fingers at any one thing, but just kind of how we prepare for having babies, in my experience, is just not very realistic. We're very interested in, nursery colors and baby clothes, which are very fun. Don't get me wrong. Don't really mean that much when you're sitting in your baby's room at 2 a.m. thinking, what have I done? This cannot be how it's supposed to. This cannot be right. Like something is not right here. So I'll go a little bit into my daughter's my first daughter's prenatal journey, just because I think that was very impactful, honestly, to me. I'm so different now than I was, even when I was pregnant with her. I'm sure that so many moms experience, but it's just kind of crazy almost to think about. It seems like a different person, a different lifetime. It's just insane. But anyway, when I was pregnant with her, started doing a lot of research. That's just kind of who I am as a person. That's, kind of my background in the science field, science area. I always like to know. I loved, contrary to some people's experience, I loved nursing school because I just loved learning all this stuff. I was always very sure that that's what I was going to do. So it was very much a natural continuation. My mom was a nurse, her aunt was a nurse. It was just kind of, I always knew what I was going to be. So nursing school was like already reaching a goal of like, this is what I've always wanted to do. It was very fun for me, obviously stressful at certain points, but I love just learning about how things worked and medications and all the different body systems. And it was just, I loved that. I still love that learning piece. But when I got pregnant with my daughter, it was 2021. And I had had an early loss right prior to that. So obviously in the early months, there was a lot of anxiety just, related to, was this actually going to happen, or was it kind of going to be end in heartbreak, like I just experienced. So there was kind of that additional piece right away in the beginning. But I just started to do so much research, and I decided I want to have a home birth, which was very controversial, decision just in my family group.
I feel like that Yeah, people
It
always
always is a thing.
say.
Yeah.
Looking back, like I maybe wouldn't have shared it in the way that I did. I don't know. It just kind of introduced a lot of other outside voices that I just wasn't really prepared for.
Done all this research, probably which led you to that decision, but then everyone's thinking that you're crazy.
Just went off the deep end. Are you serious?
Yeah.
A nurse, you work in a hospital. What is your problem?
When you read the research.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was kind of the point, I guess, where I was just, I guess I shouldn't say that was the point, but that was one decision that was made that kind of revealed to me, okay, I'm really in a different mindset maybe than I was like even a year ago or, even 6 months ago. And one of the most impactful books that I read, which actually my midwife brought over to me, it was this really old, limp, dog-eared copy. I have a newer copy now, but honestly, I had never even considered where my baby would sleep. That was just like the most basic, a bassinet or a crib. We got a crib from my in-laws. That was literally did not cross my mind. I was very invested in breastfeeding. I knew I wanted to breastfeed. I did prenatal lactation. It was something I was very invested in succeeding in. So I had kind of that covered from a biological standpoint of what to expect. But the sleep piece was just really, it's really hard, I think, to prepare yourself for it to some degree until you experience it. But this book
What was the book?
it really changed how I approach. Actually, I don't have any affiliation with it or anything, but
Safe
Safe to Sleep by Dr. James McKenna.
Nice.
I think it was the same edition. I think he has several books. It just looks a little bit different than the one I had. But anyway, I read it and it was just so life-changing. That seems so cliche to say that, but it just really was. I just thought, it makes so much sense. I don't understand why this is not something every person understands. I just don't, I was just kind of mind blown. Of course I'm going to do this then. Why wouldn't I? I'm really invested in breastfeeding. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just for our listeners, like, just give us a little synopsis of like, maybe just like the biggest thing you learned from the book or that changed your mindset.
Yeah, it talks about how co-sleeping, specifically bed sharing. I mean, people talk about co-sleeping and there are a lot of different setups to that. They don't necessarily all have to be on the same sleep surface. If you're not comfortable with that, a lot of people aren't for various reasons. So there are other variations of it that don't involve, sleeping in the same bed. But Dr. McKenna is a researcher that has just devoted a lot of years to lab research on how mothers and babies interact together as they're sleeping. And the conclusions that he's coming to are just, on one hand, they're mind blowing because they're very countercultural. On the other hand, they're just kind of duh. Literally 100 years ago, people would have been, okay, there has to be a lab for this. I'm confused. Why don't we just look at how people have existed from the beginning?
And mammals, like watching monkey.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just, again, it's revolutionary on one hand, and on the other hand, it's kind of, do we really need all of this to prove to us that our instincts are correct? But that's a whole nother cultural thing. But anyway, so it just talks about like how co-sleeping is just biologically normal. It's just what humans have been designed to do, from how your breast milk is composed chemically, the makeup of it, to how you as a mom and your baby literally interact unconsciously as you're sleeping, as far as breathing patterns and just wake cycles. And it's just all really interconnected. And he calls it breast sleeping. So literally it's it's on demand nursing 24/7. So it's not like, you breastfeed on demand during the day and then you go to sleep and your baby's a little sleep trained robot that like knows when it's nighttime and like goes to their crib for 12 hours. And then you can continue in the morning with your on demand breastfeeding. This is it. This is how it's supposed to be. There's not a off shift for how this works. This is all very interconnected.
And just to add to that, like about countercultural, it's countercultural to Western civilization, but you look at other cultures, even now in 2025, almost any other culture co-sleeps.
It is. It's counter to our culture, our Western culture.
Weird.
But truly in other so much of the rest of the world, the vast majority of the world, honestly, when it comes to population, it's just kind of how it works. I mean, again, I think if you were to try to explain to someone else, it would just be, okay, this is how we've done it forever. Why does this need to be this special, controversial thing? Because it is so controversial in our culture. And it breaks my heart, honestly. So,
And I think why it also gets controversial, and this is a whole nother, we should have a whole podcast on this, but because of the whole SIDS thing and people getting so scared about back to sleep and putting babies on, that made it more controversial because people are nervous. But if anyone, I don't know if we've ever mentioned this on the podcast before, but James McKenna has something called the Safe Sleep 7, which is, if you look that up, it really decreases any risk, and it actually can be better for the baby to be sleeping. So there's just a lot of nuance to all the research and the conversations around this, I feel.
there is, yes. And the Safe Sleep 7 is a great, thank you for bringing that up. It is kind of just the bedrock of this concept because, again, it isn't something necessarily, unfortunately, that can just be um, a blanket ideal situation for everyone, because there are instances where it would not be safe. If we have a very premature infant, or if, someone in the bed, one of the parents is taking, sedatives or is under the influence of something. Obviously, there are situations where it's not safe. So it's very good to bring that up because that is very important. It's not necessarily like, oh, sleeping with your baby is safe
In every case. But it's also, I think what's unsafe is to just act no one's ever going to co-sleep and say, oh, you're always going to sleep in your crib. And then parents are left, you said, at 2 a.m. being, I'm getting no sleep. They're getting no sleep. My baby wants to breastfeed all night. How am I supposed to do this? And then they don't know how to do it safely. I wish we just had more conversations about it.
Exactly. Yes. So in my personal story, my daughter was born and I had her in bed with me. It was a very kind of traumatic, it didn't end up being a home birth. I ended up transferring to the hospital. So there was just a lot of nuance even around the experience of giving birth to her. But honestly, it contributed even more to my desire to co-sleep. I mean, I guess I always kind of thought, okay, I got this Moses basket and I thought, I'll try to put her in it. Thanks to the book, I'm not laboring under any delusions that she'll sleep in it all night, which I would have before. That's where babies sleep.
And then you just feel shame that they don't,
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was not going to blame her for not doing it or blame myself. What am I doing wrong? Because that's another thing I see moms, asking, what am I doing wrong? What have I done? I've created this crutch. There's so much stigma around sleep that parents automatically blame themselves for things when their babies aren't sleeping the way that they think that they should.
I mean, I still feel I blame myself, even though I know all of this. My son is a really rough sleeper, and I still kind of, it's because I'm too responsive, blah, blah, blah. And I know that's not true, but some babies are just, their temperament is that they're gonna be really contact seeking. They just are.
Yeah. And temperament is not ever discussed in sleep training curriculums and programs. It's just not. Like, babies are considered like, if your baby falls within this age range, this is how their sleep should be. And it's just, people aren't that.
No.
Fit that easily into boxes. And that kind of goes into what, I'm getting off topic from my story, but it kind of goes up into what Catherine and I were talking about before we were recording. We do. We dehumanize babies to this weird degree where we have higher expectations for them than we would expect of a full-grown adult with a mature, regulated nervous system. And I just don't understand that. Why do we expect babies to be perfectly fine sleeping, 12 hours in a cold, hard mattress in a room by themselves? Like, if my husband goes away on a trip, I don't sleep well. My nervous system is elevated because, the person that I kind of co-regulate with to some degree is not there. And it's just, why is that okay? Or why is it okay for me to get thirsty in the middle of the night and get up to get a drink of water? Why is that so just pathology for a baby? Why is this happening? We need to stop this from happening. It's honestly, frankly, dehumanizing for babies, and I just hate it.
Yeah. I love thinking about it this way too. I always tell new parents this when I'm doing lactation visits is they were being fed by a placenta for 9 months, okay? And then or 10 months, and then they come out and then all of a sudden they have to deal with even just going 2 hours without food is I'm starving. Like they were continuously being fed and now they have to go 12 hours. No, they need
Yeah.
to like send them over like 2 years to doing that basically, to
Yeah.
going longer stretches, you know? Yeah.
Inputs that to us are very normal. Hunger.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Babies to babies, hunger is okay. This is a life or death thing.
Yeah.
It's not
Let
just
alone the
like
comfort piece, obviously.
you can't just say, oh, they ate an hour ago, like they can't be hungry, like they're fine. Just let them be. It's like they can't differentiate between that and like mortal danger. Like their brains just aren't set up for that.
Yeah.
And that you have the physiology part, and then you have the emotional piece of
Comfort piece, yeah.
right. You're their primary caregiver. They actually don't have the cognitive capacity to be like, she's gonna come back. No, they're like,
It's like, "I'm alone. I'm
I'm
alone."
gonna.
Object permanent. So if you're not there, they think that you left or that you're gone. Like it's really actually sad to think about, but
Oh my gosh.
makes me want to be more responsive to my own kids.
I
Even
know, me too. I'm
they're
like, "Oh."
they're old enough now that that's not necessarily, a factor that they think I'm gone. But they don't have. That's what I think a lot of people just don't understand is that they don't have the actual brain parts to come to some of these conclusions that we expect them to come to through, your harsh Western sleep training culture. We think, oh, if I don't respond to them first for this length of time, they're going to reach this conclusion. Like that reasoning piece is just so far beyond what we could ever expect them to be able to, come to that conclusion. It's just kind of crazy when you think about what we're expecting from them. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, wait, so what happened with your daughter? So
Yeah, we've been waiting for you. We can't wait to talk about sleep. So if
Oh,
we get off track, I mean, we're good with it because this is a topic that we've been wanting to talk about. So, but
okay.
please continue.
Amazing. Yeah, so I just remember sleeping with her in the hospital bed. There was no way she was going to go in that little cold plastic bassinet thing. Because for one thing, I had just worked so damn hard for her. I just didn't want to put her down. It just was so instinctual. I was just, no, I want to hold her. I just went through so much to like get to this point. Like, I don't want a single second of it to like, it was just so instinctual. And thankfully, like I was in tune with that. And like, I'm not going to try to force myself to like, I don't know if she needs to learn to sleep in her crib, like, or bassinet or whatever.
Yeah.
So in this tiny little hospital bed, it probably wasn't like the safest sleep 7 situation, but at the same time, like I wasn't really sleeping myself.
Yeah. There are nurses around. It's fine.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the second night, it's so interesting. The first night, they're so typically so sleepy and they just sleep and sleep and sleep and nurse, obviously. But the second night, they kind of come out of it a little bit. I think they kind of wake up to the world. And so it's just different. I remember my husband kind of just pacing in the room, holding her, and she was crying. And, you're already so sleep deprived. And, it just has been such a whirlwind for us. It was like a whirlwind week of like, off and on labor and whatever. So I just remember, I don't remember if it was him that suggested it or myself, but I said, maybe we should have the nurse like come and take her up to the nurse's station just for a little while so we can sleep. Like it was just kind of desperation at that point. And so we were like, okay, like we can do that. So we called her in and, she'd offered to do that. And we had said no, but that did not last long. It was so weird. Like I was sleeping in bed and I just was having these like terrible, like half awake, half asleep, like daymare kind of things of like, that wasn't actually a nurse. Like that was just some random person dressed up in a nurse's outfit. And just like this, I mean, yes, they were intrusive thoughts, but at the same time, like it was just proof to me, like, okay, like we need to be together. Like
Yeah.
it's not good for my mental health to sleep this way. I would rather not sleep and have her right next to me. Like that's better for my mental health. It just is.
Yeah.
I called her back and said, I need her back. I need her.
And I mean, I have a episode that might be coming out about a book called Nurture Revolution. Anyway, in it, she talks about matrescence. Yes,
Yes.
your brain, your amygdala is hyperactive for crying, for attachment, like
Yeah.
particularly after that time. So it's like that is normal, to be like, this is odd and I need my baby. Like if you think about bears or like if you try to take their baby away from
Yeah.
them after they give birth, you're gonna die. So
Yeah, I just read, oh my gosh, Nurture Evolution, so amazing. I'm reading it right now, but I've followed Dr. Kirschenbaum for a while and it's just so mind blowing, all of her, research and just amazing. But I saw something, I think it was yesterday even, about even the prolactin hormone
oh,
obviously is so involved in breastfeeding. It actually causes like rage and aggression. It makes you like heightened response of rage and aggression. And it's thought to be just because you're breastfeeding a baby. Like there you have a lot of like assertiveness about who gets between you. And I was just like, that actually makes so much sense.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like the whole postpartum rage
Yeah,
thing. Like,
exactly. Not just right then, but yeah. I mean, we talk about mom brain. It's actually a superpower. Like it just kind of brings us to this whole nother level of nurture and caregiving that I don't think if we didn't have those changes, it would be really hard to kind of yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it's well, obviously people are amazing adoptive parents, but yeah, there's just something biologically that happens that just changes everything. So, yeah, we got her home and yeah, I still just remember that sense of impending doom every time the sun kind of just got to where it was almost setting. This just impending doom sense of like, okay, like now comes 12 hours where I just kind of exist and try to stay sane and conscious while she kind of sleeps on me because she was, cluster feeding and she wouldn't be put down and was acting like a normal baby at 3 days and 4 days and 5 days old. But
it
it's
was
really
still
hard.
yeah. That's interesting. I've heard so many people talk about that doom thing. My mom always talks about it. About having that with her babies. And I had plenty of different things. Like I feel like postpartum anxiety and like mom rage, different things, but I don't think I ever had that. But I've heard a lot of people feel it right when the sun comes down and they're just
Yeah.
like it's
Yeah. Intense depression almost of like, how am I going to survive like the next however long? And my husband was so supportive. But again, it was like I
you
needed to
just
be
know
with
you're gonna be
her.
needed. Like
I
you just
needed to be
know
with her. Yeah. He didn't know. I mean, there wasn't really anything that he could do other than, hold her while she cried because she wanted me. But, she wasn't drinking from a bottle or anything like that. So I felt for him because he just felt kind of like, I don't know how to help you. And he helped me with kind of the material things like bringing me snacks and making sure I had water and stuff. But I looking back, I think I did try too hard. Even with, Dr. book, I think I was still like, okay, but maybe she will be one of those babies that sleeps in her bassinet. And looking back, I'm kind of like not sure like why I just didn't fully embrace like the breast sleeping, co-sleeping concept, like right from the get-go. But there was just I don't know if it just needed to be like I needed to just see like if it was gonna work.
I
Obviously
think
did.
sounds good. Like it's like, oh wait, I could have some amount of time in the day where I could
Yeah.
put her down and like
Maybe just hoping
like
against like that you're once out. Yeah.
yeah, or it's not even like to get something done. It's like you just feel like you could be your own self. But
Yeah.
then I think you tell me what you thought about the second time, but I feel like there is like a point where you have more of a radical acceptance that you don't feel like you need them to be like a way to have your solo time. Like I just remember with my son, I felt like the only way I get like freedom is like if he's asleep on a separate place over there.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
like then I feel like the second time I wasn't like that. I was like, oh, I have freedom if she's just in the carrier awake. I don't even care if she's.
Yeah. Yeah, the radical acceptance piece is so massive. I cannot overstate it.
How do you get there without going through it? Like I don't know how you tell a first time mom how to get there. I don't know.
I tell people, have radical acceptance, but yeah, I don't know that it really sinks in until I think it's a different place for everyone, honestly, where
Yeah.
you kind of have to come to that. For me, it was like maybe 5 days into my postpartum journey. And I just thought, you know what, this is crazy. Like, I can't keep doing this. I just can't. And it's not safe. Because again, going back to your point of, no one talks about the elephant in the room of like co-sleeping, you lie to your pediatrician about it because you're scared to get judged. It would be so much better if people got realistic, safe education, in the hospital of like, I understand that you might not want to do this, but I guarantee you, I can't remember if it was Dr. McKenna or somebody said up to 75%, maybe more, probably more, because again, we're lying to our providers about it. So probably the stakes are totally off anyway. But like 75% of people do this at some point. And so when you do it unsafely, that's when your risk of SIDS gets so out of hand.
Then like just entrapments and stuff, like, because a lot of times it's just being on the couch, like not being on a safe surface.
Or yeah, exactly. You're sitting up in a recliner and the airway is just not optimal position, and that just causes issues. So I just feel like it would be so much better if we acknowledged that, yep, this is actually a really biological thing that happens. Like, you might not want to do it, and that's totally fine. Like, I don't think anyone's saying that everyone has to do it this way, but you should know that it is really normal and that it's not going to mean that you have someone else in your bed until your child graduates from high school. Like, everyone talks about that, and it's like, that's not true. Like,
and I will say, like, it makes sense that you would have that hope in the first couple of days, like, oh, maybe my baby will be one that sleeps in the bassinet, especially because or at least I don't have children yet. And I knew you have ingrained in you SIDS. You know what I mean? And it's like so fear based that you're like, that it just is in the back of your mind. That's like, I was talking to a friend from college and she just had a newborn and she's like, but what, like, what, like, what, and like, it's like, what if my baby dies? Like, that is like the amygdala screaming out, So,
Yeah.
For me, it was truly better. Again, I keep going back to this, but it was in my case at least. So many times I hear, I need to sleep train for my mental health. And I'm totally not bashing like prioritizing your mental health, because I think that you should as a mom. Like, you can't pour into your child unless you have something to pour with. But what I have issue with, or the other thing is like, I'm going to stop breastfeeding for my mental health. And for me, it's kind of like that, those things, while sometimes they do need to happen, I would say maybe in some situations, like for me, doing those things and totally committing to like doing them like in the most biologically like sound way was what saved my mental health. It was like falling into it and being like, this is really hard and I need my village to kind of come around me now. And that looks different maybe than I thought it would. It maybe looks like me taking a nap instead of like going out and getting a massage or like getting a pedicure or something. Like, again, I'm not like bashing those.
It makes you slow down.
It's just the radical acceptance part. Once that kind of clicks for you, I laid down with my baby in our bed at 5 days postpartum, and it was just like, oh man, like, why didn't I start doing this like 5 days ago? Like, I don't know.
But amazing that you did it even then, that you already had that knowledge and confidence to do it then. That's amazing.
And I just feel so bad for parents who leave the hospital thinking like, I will not sleep with my baby. I will not sleep with my baby. Like, I don't want to put them at risk, because again, like, they're trying to protect their baby. But for some people, like, they end up falling
scary
asleep.
video. Did you see that
Yeah.
scary video they make you watch at the hospital? Like,
I don't think they showed me a video, but that's horrible.
Yeah. It like really fear mongers you into being like, I was like, oh, shoot, I better
because
not.
then those same parents who are determined not to fall asleep in their bed with their baby fall asleep on the couch with their baby.
I know.
Way, way, way more dangerous. And that's just so infuriating to me that we can't like come to this, just a better like education and knowledge that will actually protect babies. Like, that will actually protect babies if we teach parents about like what babies sleep like what's normal for them. And we are wired from the very fiber of our being to be in this constant symbiotic relationship with our newborns. Like, I mean, it helps us, it helps them.
Your milk supply, like, I always tell people, like, if you have a night nurse or something, I have a lot of clients who will, and they'll try to pump at night, and the one thing is, like, you do need to pump or latch between 1 and 5 a.m. because that's when your prolactin's the highest. And if you don't, then that will usually, like, over time decrease your milk supplies. There's so many, of course, there's many ways to do it, but I really like that you're just sharing, like, how empowering it can be to, like, just lean into it and, like,
Yeah.
helpful it can be for the whole. It just helps everything, I don't know, just like you said, go together and work
And
well.
I was gonna bring that up too, so I appreciate you bringing that up just about how I feel like a lot of moms too will sleep train their babies. Again, I'm not judging the motivation behind it at all. It's just, again, they sleep train their babies start sleeping through the night, and their milk dries up and they're surprised, or like they didn't expect that. And it's just kind of like, I have a big problem with sleep training, sabotaging well-meaning moms who would want to continue breastfeeding, but they're not informed of that. Like, actually, your prolactin levels, your nighttime feedings are kind of what drive the whole train. Like, your
Yeah.
feedings in the early morning are what's predicting your milk supply for like later that day. So
Yep.
again, it doesn't do much service. It doesn't do baby service.
And what we've
Yeah.
talked about in previous episodes is like if someone's trying to drive you to make a decision based on fear, red light, or red flag. Like
Yeah.
it's yeah. And also I love that you talked about how like your baby's not going to be with you in the bed until they graduate high school or whatever.
Yeah.
These idea of bad habits. You posted an Instagram that was so good, a video of like you pouring coffee into a sippy cup and be like, this is a bad habit.
That's so funny.
Stuffed animals
Yeah.
on like a crib, like this is a bad habit. But
Yeah.
co-sleeping is not a bad
No.
habit. So
Yeah. Or being responsive or
Yeah.
breastfeeding on demand. Like the list goes on. Again, I tell my clients, if your baby needed to, snort Coke or something to go to sleep, like, yeah, that would be a bad sleep habit that we would have to break, and like we'd have to figure something else out. But
Wait, I have a
you're
question for
coming
you.
to me with like, my baby needs to nurse to sleep. Like, is that a bad habit? I'm like, it's for both doing exactly what you need to do.
Oh, I have a question for you well, you can get to this if you want throughout, but I'm wondering, like, with feeding and sleeping and breast sleeping with either of your kids, like, was there a point that you felt like you wanted to move away from it or start doing more independent sleep? And like, how do you approach that with clients in a nurturing way, I guess?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Because yeah, it's not necessarily something that you want to do forever.
Right.
And for various reasons at various times, parent-led boundaries can be put in place that are still very respectful to the baby and the relationship, and they don't harm attachment and they don't harm breastfeeding. So yeah, when I got pregnant with my second daughter, my older daughter was about 19 months old, I believe. We had already started to sort of try to slowly introduce like a separate sleep surface. We had made her like a floor bed situation, which is just gold for so many things transition wise, because you're still able to like sleep with them, snuggle them, and then maybe roll away and, kind of start that transition to sleeping more independently. Besides being great for development, I mean, they can still like roll around. You don't have to worry about them falling off the bed, and just great. But anyway, so yeah, the nursing thing, I think, as sometimes happens, I think when a mom is pregnant, like it goes a little bit naturally just because your milk supply can go down a little bit. And there's just some kind of, I think, biological feedback where, for whatever reason, I thought weaning her would just be an absolute nightmare. She was always just wanted the boob for everything, like, well into her toddlerhood,
Mhm.
which, was fine, but I knew I wasn't going to be able to like tandem feed. I wasn't really interested in that. And I thought, it'd be nice to have a little bit of a break maybe between. So I did start to just kind of put some boundaries around that. I think people hear boundaries and they think, oh, that doesn't support my attachment goals, stuff like that. And it's like, no, like we're not permissive parents. We are empowered,
Yeah.
responsive, when we do put a boundary in place for the sake of our, mental health or our baby, like whatever the reasoning might be, there are so many ways to do that in a very respectful way that still fosters attachment. And honestly, it's good. I mean, at that stage for a toddler to have boundaries. I mean, it's
I was
healthy.
about to say, I think I weaned my son around the same age, and I feel like it was, like, the first time, like, I really had to,
Yeah.
like, put real boundaries, because before that, they're so responsive, or you are so responsive because you're like, they're crying because they,
Yeah.
they don't have a way to communicate. Then once they start talking, and then a lot of times when you're weaning, you're like, well, like this is the first way that you have to kind of
Yeah.
enforce something, and like it can be a good teacher for both of you. Like I feel like it taught me how to set a boundary, you know?
Yeah, it does. And how to support emotion during the boundary. Like you're not
Yes.
just saying, nope, sorry, you can't nurse and just like carrying on. Like hopefully you're explaining it and there are books out there that you can utilize and social stories and they're at such a nice age too because it's like they do understand what you're telling them and you can really do it in a way that's just very compassionate because it is a huge change for them. I think a lot of people don't really understand that too, or don't think about it in that way of just like, this has always been their source of comfort, not just calories. Like that's probably just the tip of the iceberg. There's so
Yeah.
much more that goes into this than just being a food source. So it
Yeah.
makes total sense that they're going to have emotions around this. And, you just try to support the emotions as best you can. And eventually, again, like I said, it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. I can't remember if I started during the day or during the night first. Usually to my clients, I suggest if you don't start weaning during the day, then you should at least start practicing supporting emotion during the day because that emotion at night is just so much more intense in the moment because it's the middle of the night. Everyone's tired and there's just it's just so many other factors go into it, I think. But practice starting to support emotion during the day around a boundary, like I understand this is really hard. Like I totally get it.
And
I'm
even like if
they're
you
in trouble.
practice giving like a water during the day or milk in a cup, like at least so that they already know, like sometimes mom says no and gives me the milk in the cup. So then it's not like the first time is in the middle of the night and you're like, here, you can have milk. And they're like, what?
Exactly. When
Yeah.
it's like cold turkey in the middle of the night,
Yes.
I'm not saying that doesn't work sometimes, but for my kids, it definitely wouldn't. They'd be like, oh, no.
Yeah. So at least they've seen the boundary before and they've seen like
Yeah.
sometimes it is off the table.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. It's not always going to be on top like it always has been.
Right.
Currently, I am working on, I wouldn't even say night weaning as much as just like starting to set some boundaries at night around nursing for my 18-month-old. And it can be challenging. I mean, sometimes she's fine. Sometimes she's fine. And sometimes it's just not a good time. And I think you have to be aware of that as a mom. Like, it's okay. Again, it's not a bad habit or a failure to kind of give in, for lack of a better word, but just like, okay, this isn't a good time. Like, this is too much emotion. Like, I don't feel comfortable with this. So, we're going to do this. Maybe we'll shorten it a little bit or something. But
That doesn't mean that
truly,
ruins your whole weaning plan, like
Yeah.
to live in one
it's
day.
being in tune with your baby and yourself. And, if they're teething or something, I mean, there might be something else going on that sometimes you're like, okay, we're going to punt this until, a little bit down the road, maybe.
Well, hi, Kitty. We get to see her. So cute.
Oh my goodness.
Talking about you.
Welcome.
So adorable. This is the one you're talking about, right?
Yep, this is Artemis, my little 18-month-old daughter.
Hey, Artemis.
Cute.
Girl. I have a question about sleep. Like,
Yeah.
okay, so, and this is just me coming from like, a knowledgeable background. But so say you sleep in like a one, and I don't know if this is your approach, but just thinking for future purposes. Say you sleep in one big bed and the babies go down before you. So
Mhm.
when you go to sleep, then do they wake up and is it problematic? And yeah, or do you all go to sleep at the same time?
I mean, yes.
Okay, depends. Yeah.
There are a lot of setups. I mean, it kind of depends on your family too. Both of my kids have been a little bit different. And again, this kind of comes back to a temperament thing. I mean, some babies, just their temperament is they're always kind of in a lighter sleep. and kind of that disruption environmentally of like noise and motion are going to be more disruptive to their sleep. Some babies, I would say, don't really experience that. And age wise, too, there's just so many factors. I will say with my first, my husband goes to bed fairly early. So I would, and this was when she was a little bit older, I guess, too. But I would rock her to sleep and rock and nurse her to sleep, like in the rocking chair. And then when she was asleep, I would transfer her into bed with him because he would be ready to go to bed at that time. And I'm a little bit more of a night owl, I would say. So I would be able to then have a little bit of time to like, take a shower or read a book or something. That was kind of ideal, best case scenario. Sometimes she would wake up when I transferred her and, then I would either, lay with her myself or he would walk her or, sometimes again, radical acceptance. You're just like, okay, cool. Like I'm going to read my book in bed. This isn't worth like,
I'm in like the 9-month, like
yeah,
regression, or just the 8 to 10 month, there's like a little bit of a
Yeah.
sleep hiccup, and she's getting teeth, and I'm like, now I've just been like, whatever, I'll just go to bed early, even though I don't really want to, but I'm like, it's probably good for me anyway, I'll just go to bed with you.
That's another piece. Yeah, it's another piece of radical acceptance. It kind of, to answer your question, I would say depends on how much you need that alone time. Sometimes you're able to get your child to sleep, roll away quietly, and have some degree of time to do something. For me, my babies were always pretty like unpredictable with how long they would stay asleep. So I will say for my second daughter, I have just kind of embraced like that's my time still, but I'm in bed with her. So I will like bring a snack in there, or, like, my headphones and my iPad, or like I still feel like I have alone time, but I'm still with her, like supporting her to sleep because she, I would say, hasn't been quite as easy to like kind of roll away and like do my own thing up to this point. I think now maybe it would be better. But again, once you kind of get into the habit of going to bed early or going to kind of into rest mode early, you're kind of like, morning, like the dishes will be there in the morning.
Yeah.
True.
One thing I will say, don't do housework during that magical little window of time. Just do not do it. It's not worth it. I'm sorry if people hate this, but like for a long time, I felt like that's what I needed to do with like my precious seconds of like, oh my gosh, my baby's sleeping alone. Like this is like angels are singing, like, oh, and I felt like, okay, how much cleaning can I do like in this short period of time? And then I just thought, this is so stupid. Like, why am I doing cleaning?
When they're awake playing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Are they going to think that the house just magically cleans itself? Like, no.
Yeah.
So I honestly, like, no matter how messy my house is, I will not. It's just not something I do when my babies are like sleeping. I'm like, this is my only time to like read my book or do something like watch a show. I'm just not willing to like,
Yeah.
I'm not willing to spend that time doing housework. So if I had any advice for like someone who's always tempted, I would just be like, something for yourself that's going to, even if you're not sleeping, be restful for you. During these periods of time as a mom, like rest is more of a verb than it is a noun. Rest
I like that.
Rest is things that you do for yourself. Rest is like music that you play. Rest is food that you make, coffee, like a walk. Like that's what rest is during these moments when you're a young mom.
That is so, I want to feel that. That is amazing.
It's not 8 hours of uninterrupted.
And then you feel like, oh my gosh, I should be resting right now. You're like, and it's like, yeah, it's a verb. I like that.
If it's making you feel rested, like keep doing it. Like it doesn't matter what it is. It's going to be different.
Because so much of it too with the whole sleep thing is like this mindset of like, I used to think I needed, like I read that book, Why We Sleep. I like that book, but it's basically saying that like you need 8 hours of sleep a night. Of course, that's really good for our health. But I just like, it doesn't have to be continuous 8 hours. Like in our history, like people didn't used to sleep in more chunks and like, yeah. So sometimes going to bed earlier and then getting more interruptions in the night, you can still feel just as rested. And like you said, like so many times if I wake up and it's been like a terrible night of sleep, then I'm just like, hey, I'm going to have my coffee and I'm going to like do something else, like the verbs.
Exactly. You do. And sometimes those are just moving really slow. I might get hate for this, but letting my daughter watch some shows, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's just things that you do to survive these challenging. I never want anyone to think I'm belittling
How
sleep
hard it is.
deprivation and how hard it is, because it is really hard. But in my opinion, and what I'm passionate about, is kind of just the biology of it, though, isn't what makes it hard. It's the outside expectations and our culture, and that's what makes it hard. It's not
Having to stay on
breastfeeding
this
and
crazy
sleeping with your
schedule.
baby. Like, that's how you survive it. That's
Uh,
how I survived it. I mean, I went back to work with my first. I didn't have much of a choice. And honestly, that I think is what saved both my milk supply or lactation journey and my mental health, because no matter how separated from her I felt during the day, I always knew I had 12 hours, give or take, of complete connection during the night. And as hard as that was sometimes, because you're working a job and stuff, it also was what saved me. So I think that nuance is not well communicated sometimes, of yes, this is hard. It's all the other stuff that make it hard. It's not this stuff that comes so naturally to us and is ingrained in our biology. That's not the hard stuff.
Yeah.
What we're expected to do on top of that.
Yes.
yeah. Wow. Well,
That's
okay.
awesome.
Yeah, just to summarize, always ask what you would say to a new mom who is struggling with feeding or struggling with sleep. And you kind of did give a great piece of advice. Would you say anything else or
I would just say, as cliche as it is, I mean, everybody says this, but it just doesn't last very long.
I was
Like,
about to say, yeah.
I never want someone
Very.
to look back and think like, gosh, I could have held them more. I could have held them more. I felt I shouldn't for whatever reason. Or, I could have co-slept looking back. Maybe that would have saved us, but I was scared to do it in the moment, or I felt it would be forever, or, the list goes on. And again, these are not judgments against people. This is just how things are viewed and where we live and what we
Yeah.
hear, from day one. And I just think to myself, like, it is so tragic. I regret like sending my daughter to the nurse's station for that like section.
I just love your perspective, and I'm so glad that I think this will be such a good episode for people to just hear this perspective, because I feel, yeah, you said a lot of people don't get to that point unless their baby just really doesn't sleep for whatever reason, or they have a friend that tells them, hey, you can sleep with them in the bed.
Yeah.
I feel like people don't really, they need examples of it, or if they are doing it, they're like doing it out of desperation and don't really realize. Yeah. And don't realize that, like, hey, or they feel shame about it. Like, oh my gosh, I'm creating bad habits. I'm not setting them up for good sleep. And it's like, no, if they take every nap in the carrier and they take
Yeah.
every nap sleeping with you, they're going to be fine. At some point throughout toddlerhood, you will keep working on it, and you can keep teaching them how to sleep alone, but it's like a journey. It doesn't have to be, it can be when they're ready and when you're ready.
And, Dr. Kirschenbaum would say all that high concentrated nurture is literally like priming them for the most success at, being independent when they have the brain makeup to actually be able to do that when it's age appropriate. All that high concentrated nurturing is doing nothing but good things for them.
yes.
And
Yeah.
for you.
It's so true. Yeah, you both need it as your brain changes and it just explodes, in neural connections. Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Thank
So
you so
thank you
much,
so
Laura.
much.
Yeah, Abby, did you have something else to say? I know.
No, I was gonna say, just your advice was just, it doesn't last that long. I just think that's so great, because it's,
Yeah.
all of these things, every phase is, we have 3 years or 5 years to like do this,
Yes.
and then that's when you're doing it. And
I don't
they're
good.
not gonna want us to,
Yeah.
they're gonna be very independent. Yeah.
Yeah. My 3.5-year-old woke up this morning in her own bed.
Thank
Literally, if you would have told me that when she was 9 months old, I would have been, that can't be my child. It just wasn't ever.
Did it just happen naturally? Did it over
It
time she stayed longer?
just so gradually.
Still waiting for that with my almost 4-year-old.
Yeah.
But he comes in at like 2 a.m. now. But every year I feel it's gotten a little bit longer. So I'm okay. Eventually, I feel like one day he's just gonna stay. But
And my husband will still lay with her to sleep. And usually he ends up falling asleep in there. So essentially she's still co-sleeping just with him. But now he can leave and it's not 20 minutes later. It's just, you could set your alarm on it. She's going to be awake. Sometimes that still happens, for various reasons. But again, things this morning when she wakes up at appropriate time in the morning, walks out of her, just like, how did this happen? And did what it needed to do.
That reminds me of a previous episode we did where mom was sharing that her baby always slept with her mouth open, and then she did some body work and stuff, and eventually she looks over and sees her baby sleeping with the mouth closed. And it's like these things do sometimes, I'm not saying an intervention when you need it, but things tend to take care of themselves.
Yep. And that's a huge piece of my work with clients too, is again, that's a great point. There are true sleep red flags that are, medical issues or, sensory things that you can actually help with. It's hard for me to kind of talk about radical acceptance, but also caveat with like, that also isn't just a blanket. Everything is fine. We'll survive.
Yeah.
It's like really are things that you can do often to optimize sleep without feeling the need to ignore your baby or, continuing that high nurture environment that you're wanting. So that's the exciting part of what I do is I can look, at, the detailed intake form. And I think of it like an iceberg, at the top, it's the things that you see, the bedtime struggles and the short naps and the split nights and the restless sleep and just all the things that parents tear their hair out about. But on the bottom part of the iceberg is all of the things that go into sleep, personality, sensory, emotions, parental processing of emotions, medical things, oral restrictions and breathing and teeth and other discomfort and food sensitivity. And there's so much too that goes into it that's kind of the beauty of my work is I call myself kind of an integrative sleep specialist. So I take all of the factors and help optimize the plan that works for your family. It's awesome. That doesn't include sleep training. So that's a great point is there are things that you can do to help, sometimes that you should do to support your child. And then the sleep part, it's never really about the sleep in those cases. It's just
we optimize everything.
That's what you see and that's what affects you. So that's what you're worried about. But often there's a lot more going on too.
I feel like there's similarities between that and feeding. Sometimes it's not about birth, it's about
so good talking to you. I'm so glad we did this episode. This was great.
It was my privilege. I really enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much.
Before we let you go, where can people find you if they want to seek your services?
So I'm on Instagram, Strawberry Moon Sleep, and then my website is www.strawberrymoonsleep.com. I named it after the supermoon or the full moon in June because that was when my daughter was 6 months old when I started.
Wonderful.
There's some interference.
Yeah, sorry. So okay, you named it after the moon so say that again, when your daughter.
No, it's the full moon in June, according to the Old Farmer's Almanac. Each full moon of the month has like a colloquial name, basically. And it's called the strawberry moon in June because that's when the early strawberries ripen. And I named it that because I always have been fascinated by celestial bodies and kind of astrology type things. But also that was the month that I started my training because I reached a point, I think, where it was like, hey, I've kind of integrated some of these struggles with my daughter. Like now I want to help other people do the same thing. So it was kind of like reaching that point where it's like, okay, I feel not that I've learned everything there is to learn by any means, but like I've kind of come to this realization and now I want to help other moms come to the same realization. So anyway, just kind of an anecdote behind the name.
Awesome. Love to hear it. Well, thank you so much, Laura. I learned a lot and I know that our listeners will, and we just appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We're so happy you joined us for this episode of the Feeding Hour. If you are enjoying the podcast, please leave us a review or send it to a friend. It helps these feeding stories go out to the public and to new moms that might feel alone. If you have any feedback for us on how we can improve or would like to share your story, please email us at thefeedinghourpodcast@gmail.com. Also, if this podcast has helped you and you're in a position to give back, You can now support us on Patreon to help keep the Feeding Hour alive. Just $5 a month would really help us to keep it going. The link is in the show notes, and we would so appreciate it. Until next time, happy feeding.